Hey guys, it's Khalil,
Hey, it's Chad.
and we are the Marshals of Truth. Okay, so Chad and I, we've been thinking here and there over the past, few weeks, really, and we've referenced it, in each one of the episodes and here and there in each one of the series that we've done recently. We've just been thinking about societies, political establishments, and we think about like the broad interpretation of society and how it's supposed to run and how it can be best ran. Like how close are we getting to our modern day utopia? Now, there is the common contrast between order and chaos, almost as if like it's some term that can be like best described in a Marvel comic, something fictional. Like order versus chaos, it's such a big idea that you don't really want to think about it. But if you care about political society, if you care about the world around you, and not to be taken over by a dictator, it's probably best to look at it in more down to earth terms. What about the much more troubling contradiction or contrast, however you want to put it, between peace and freedom? They both sound great. Peace, you want peace. Freedom, you also want freedom. Can you have both? Well, we'll have to answer that
Absolutely.
question later on.
Yeah.
And in Rome, in ancient Rome, they had a saying that best described how you were going to be able to best maintain peace. And this is going to sound contradictory, but it was si vis pacem para bellum. And you might have heard of this. It's called, it translates roughly to if you want peace, prepare for war. So if you want peace, you're going to have to get ready for all the terrible war that might come if you're not ready for it. Same with freedom. If you if you want to bring about all the freedom in the world, then you have to be ready for all the terrible things that come with that. And all around the globe, from early history, from early into history and way before, and the establishment of statehood has contended with this issue. And many statesmen in the modern era also have done so and tried to build off of our ancient philosophers of the past era. Should there be a balance between peace and freedom? How is that balance found? And which system best balances it?
Yeah. And that's with and that's the issue that we're going to be coming to terms with here, with our series on, as will be called, peace v freedom. As time has progressed, we've gone from times where humanity is simply an anarchy. There's no states, no civilizations, to a time now of gigantic countries, states, establishments, empires, even, um, in which the question is still being grappled with today. To think that we've reached an answer is kind of absurd. And in order to form better societies, to form better countries, to form better ways to progress humankind, we have to find this kind of balance. Because, as we'll come to describe, one to some people, one may seem more important than the other. However, leaning on one will leave that other to be completely gone, and of course, lead to many downfalls in that other area. And so it's an issue, like I said, that we're having today. And so we feel it's important to bring to you all. Um,
And it's important to look at, the earliest of times in history before the idea of a civilization of any sort of state organized society, was ever developed. Um, there was, as Chad said, anarchy. There was no such thing as the law, with all the terrible things that the modern person has to deal with the state, like taxes and whatever, like there was no one to complain to, with nudity, rape, murder, incest, extinction of animal species, like climate change, even in its um, before the industrial era. There was simply nowhere you could go if there was a problem. There was only the use of force that could change how other people interacted. There was no such thing as the law. And, you know, I'd have to say that we definitely have a benefit to ourselves as a society that we have developed such things as the state, because we do have the means of which we can make complaints, and that's what a police force is supposed to do. It's supposed to protect and serve. But it's important to know um, that before anyone starts talking about communism or anarchy, how we might be able to achieve that in a modern world, look back 20, 30,000 years, and see all the terrible things people had to deal with before. There's a certain organized society about the modern day. They did not have that 20, 30,000 years ago. All the terrible things about a state they may not have had to deal with that. But did they have any protection? No. Did they have any freedom? No.
Yeah,
Well,
they had freedom, but
that's the thing. That's the thing.
freedom of safety to be from other people, not as much. Because everyone had the freedom to do or act or steal or murder as they pleased. No one else is going to stop them. As we said, in the modern day, we have police or laws, to incentivize people to not do certain things that society has deemed as bad. Look back 20, 30,000 years ago, that was not the case. People did what they did to either to survive or to gain an advantage over one another. And in general, there's a reason that society has advanced towards states and to places that have order, places that have structure, is because in a certain way we want, while humanity does want freedom, we do want freedom to be safe. We want ideas such as peace, and those are the things that we're kind of going to. But the general progression, as we of course will kind of explain, is that we've gone from this kind of anarchic, just state of survival, state of living, state of supremacy, kind of animalistic behavior as humans, towards organized, ordered societies and states, to the point where we even have the ability to criticize some other person and not be stabbed by a spear.
Right. And as we will continue to do throughout the rest of this series, which will be long, get ready, um, is quoting a book I recently read, and Chad and I both had the time to analyze and pick apart quotes from. Um, a book by historian slash author Alan Bryant. In the book On Politics, um, a history of political thought from Herodotus to the present. And so it is an analysis of political philosophy, of the most consequential contributions to the understanding of political philosophy, mainly Western political philosophy, from the ancient Greek understanding to today with globalism. And so in the introduction, within only about 2, 3 pages of the book, I found something very interesting, and it was the general idea of the development of a state. And of course, it's because this is in the introduction, it's very broad. But anyway, quote, early attempts at balance began with the basic understanding that we, the public, must give ourselves over to the unfettered discretion of the wisest, find a godly ruler and give them absolute authority, and do not ask except the powers that be, and think of your immortal soul. Such answers are both ancient and contemporary. They raise more questions in turn: religious, philosophical, historical, biological. There is a pattern to history. Whether we are doomed by our biology to fight endless wars, ultimately, what the point may be of our human existence. There are 3 things I want to point out about this quote. One, attempts at balance. Immediately, the first few words of this quote, Ryan is touching at the idea that there needs to be a balance in society, you know, and then we'll have to make it clear over the course of the series, and hopefully, by the end of just this episode, we'll have made our introductory argument that that balance is between peace and freedom. It's not just as simple as order and chaos. The second thing is that this is a very old idea, you know, and the idea is that there's something in our biological nature, something that we cannot change about ourselves, that we always want to fight. We always want to fight for something. We hate when the fight is over, like whether it be for social change or whether it be to find a difference between someone that you don't like, whether it be physical, or like mental, something that they can change, can't change, whatever. That we always want to fight for something. And so there's something biological about that. We can't look at people on the other side of the political aisle and understand that there's more things in common than things against. There's things like racists and sexists. They look at the other to fight. And that's what we talked about a lot with the far left equals far right, and so much in the ethno-nationalism series we just finished, that there needs to be an other, and I'm forgetting what number 3 is. I might have to spill it
Yeah,
out at some later point, but basically it's a very interesting quote about the general idea that there may be some aspect about violence that we cannot change, and that's why there needs to be, as Ryan puts it, a balance.
yeah. One thing that a quote points out is it brings up the possibility that we may be, quote, whether we are doomed by our biology to fight endless wars, end quote. It brings up the idea that we as humans, should we keep to our natural ways, would just end up fighting, would end up killing each other, living in a state of chaos and disorder forever, should we simply seek to these ways. But I mean, the thing is that we as humans are more than just kind of pre-programmed biological beings. We have minds that can think, minds that can create, that could collaborate, that could discuss, philosophize. And so we have a capability to rise above that biology, and we have the capability to rise above what our natural state, in which it kind of implies in this quote, that is chaos, that is violence, quote, endless wars. We have the capability to rise above that and to create communities, create societies in which we could either stay and go on with our natural ways of continuously fighting with each other, or find a way to work together to make things peaceful and to live in a common well-being for all of mankind.
This is seriously, this is truly a timeless idea. As we will make clear with our analysis of this book, as well as our own ideas on the matter. This is a timeless idea. From 3,000 years ago, people were still thinking about this. They were thinking about, just how hard it is to like have that balance, and that balance has many different political philosophers, from Plato to Thomas More and even Karl Marx. They all just wanted to get rid of politics, because politics is grappling with the idea that people always disagree. Like, politics would not be a thing if everyone just agreed with each other. The whole reason that we have politics is to discuss our differences, but what about our similarities? There'd be no reason for politics if the people recognize that there are more things in common between us and things against, then there'd be no reason for a dictator to exploit its people, or for its people to rise up against that dictator, because there would be no conflict of which our biology is going to fan the flame of. And again, as Chad said, we are not robots. We do not accept fate. Like, our destiny is not a mathematical equation. You know, we, you know, we use our mind and our brain to go forward with the idea that we can change this aspect of ourselves that wants conflict. And civilization itself is a physical manifestation of that hope, that timeless hope that we can bring peace.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the establishment of civilization began with the idea that um, contracts or agreements with whoever it is that's above us, whatever leader we put above ourselves, um, we make agreements with those people. We make things that those people have to agree with in kind of a Western scape and just the grander scale of the entire planet. Them ideas of those would be law, rules, rules that those people above us will have to abide by. And so civilization itself is a rejection of that. We have to just be living in chaos. We have to just be going with our biological need to feed and survive and be the best. Civilization itself is a rejection of that. It's the idea that we could be more, like if we could be more, and that we can make to create that kind of peaceful world and put people who can manage not just our lives, but the lives of other people around us, and that those people above us, we could trust them and they can trust us to kind of work together and figure out our problems.
And then it's with that idea that you recognize, you think about it and you step back. You're like, wait a minute, how did this whole idea of a society develop? Like, how did we get from, a bunch of like separate, like familial tribes running around and like hunting and gathering to this? Like, you have to really look back and think about it. And you're like, oh my God, civilization is a miracle. How did we do it? you know? And with that recognition, with that recognition, sorry, that civilization is a miracle, you then also have to critique it a little bit because civilization was also a rejection of the freedom, that each individual person had back in a pre-civilizational world, when there was no law, when there was no law enforcement, when there was no state,
Yeah,
or
no rules, no
taboo
law,
to
no
beg.
order, really. Yeah,
Exactly. There was more order over that, over the chaos. And again, as we'll look at it more, it was more peace than freedom. And so no one recognized this, better, I think, in as early as he did, I'd say also. But, you know, just putting it the best way, I think, the most poetic way is Rousseau, who in the beginning of his work, called A Social Contract, um, which is justly famous, Alan Alan Ryan, the author of the book, again, that we'll continue to refer to on politics, he is quoted as saying, "Man was born free and is everywhere in chains." Now let's just step back a little bit. Chad and I can help to analyze this real quick, but man was born free and is everywhere in chains.
yeah. So with that, you get a contrast. What it is a contrast of time. Man was born free and is everywhere in chains. Going back to the birth of not the birth of civilization, the birth of mankind, as we've kind of described, we were absolutely free. We were able to move around, do whatever we want. There was no order, there was no law, there was no government, there were no people above us to tell us what to do or not to do. It was what we had to do to survive. And of course, like I said, that means the freedom to transgress upon other people, to steal their things, kill them, murder them. There was nothing from stopping that. However, as civilization, the idea of civilization evolved and was kind of it was brought upon in greater detail of what civilization meant. Whether that it became of course became from groups of people living in a certain area to people being in charge of those groups of people. And then those people in charge having to abide by some rules, or maybe not abide by some rules. Maybe they rule over how much grain those people would produce, or they would manage some people who would go who would fight against these other civilizations who were out there. But civilization, as we said, it's evolved over time and has taken man from what was a state of absolute freedom and state of absolute chaos, if I may, into a place that is governed by rules, order, society, and law. Um, and so when you look at law, as I said, it's a rejection of freedom. It keeps us from doing everything that we can or everything that we want to. And so if you want to contrast it with the freedom that we had when mankind first evolved, when it first differentiated itself, it's essentially the same as being in chains. We aren't able to go run around, go to a different country, go steal something go take something from a grocery store, and then go eat it in a public, like standing out in a public place. There's rules, there's orders. We can't drive everywhere. We can't fly over there. So many things, so many movements, actions, words are limited. And so if you look at society, you compare it to how we were just starting out as mankind. We're basically in chains. But if you it this quote kind of paints that, you know, calling it that we're in chains in a negative light. Um, in that the freedom that we had as mankind was, of course, it was freeing, and that it was good. Freedom is good, and we'll get into it. There are intricacies to that, and that maybe absolute freedom isn't all good. Maybe absolute peace isn't all good. And we'll kind of detail that as we go throughout the series. But what we have in this quote is illustrating how far we've come, in that while we were born free, where we are now is in the chains that we have, I would say, created for ourselves to keep ourselves in check.
Right. And like for those that say that peace is the number one goal, like pacifists in a way, you best way to call them, I suppose, that peace should be the number one priority over all else. They are the people that may also lay down their freedom if they may lay down their freedom to continue to bring about and maintain that peace if it were to be trampled upon by someone that wanted to take away their freedom. Now, um, throughout most of society, and we'll look at a lot of the more older examples of people as well as the new ones. Again, it's a very wide range of people, from the earliest of times to now that have been thinking about these concepts. And we're gonna try our best to be chronological, about the people that we bring up and the ideas that they had, but that we will be going back and forth here a bit. And this quote I like quite a lot. It's on page 176 of On Politics, where Ryan is referring to the ideas, the political philosophy of a monk slash historian Augustine, Saint Augustine, as he is otherwise known. Back in the late 300s, early 400s, in the late Roman imperial era, Rome was a Christian state by then, and so um, it wasn't the pagan Rome that killed Jesus, and so like people, Christianity was becoming much more accepted throughout the realm, to the point where it's becoming the state religion. And Augustine, he used his religion to justify the very peaceful, internally peaceful reality of Roman imperial rule. Um, quote, Ryan analyzing his belief, quote, the central feature of the state is that it wields coercive power. Private individuals can cajole and entreat. The state can issue orders and back up those orders by violence against the recalcitrant. Punishment serves two purposes. The threat of punishment gives bad people a motive to behave better. Their wills may only be amenable to earthly inducements. but against the attractions of misconduct, we can set the dissuasion of earthly penalties and thereby promote peace. Since the fall, original sin, we have only limited free will. But Augustine does not underestimate the possibility that with appropriate aids, we can avoid choosing the more obvious and antisocial evils. The ultimate cause of the existence of political societies is sin. Absent the fall, we might live in simple, egalitarian, communist communities with neither property nor law nor political authority. Our fallen nature needs regulation.
I found that is a really, really interesting quote, and it really helps illustrate why societies, why governments, why politics exist at all. As we kind of detailed it earlier in what we were talking about on why politics exists, and that's to figure out our differences, to figure out what is right, quote unquote, what is right, what is wrong, what does our community view as something that we do not want to be present here. And so that's where government, that's what a state, that's where civilization can come into. It is a body or a people or a leader who has the ability to kind of determine what is right, what is wrong, and people will follow through with that because at the end of the day, as we kind of described, like Rousseau said, man was born free. We came out of a absolutely free ability to do whatever good or bad that we pleased. And since we have all that freedom, we have all that freedom to do bad things. We have all these freedoms to transgress, sorry, about on others and against others. And because we have that ability to do wrong, we need to bring that into check. Because of in a religious context, it's called, the original sin, with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Um, with Eve eating, the apple of sin, things of that sort. We have failed in a sense in that we haven't just in our nature, it's not just our nature to only do good things because we have freedom, we have the freedom to do bad things, of course, and things that we do not want others to do to us. And then that's where again, civilization, a government, a state, or laws will come into. Because at the end of the day, to kind of bring back to the quote, our fallen nature needs regulation.
And you can look at this through a very literal through a very purely philosophical lens. You think about the religious nature of this quote, and you think about the original sin, and the fact, and as the story goes in the Bible, that then Adam and Eve, as being like the two humans of the world, that they have been given um, that after the um the story of original sin, and after they had eaten the apple, um that they had been given awareness, self-awareness, that then with that action of eating the apple, that they had separated themselves from other animals.
Right.
Animals,
It,
they're not really convicted of a crime, because they don't know the difference between good and evil. But ever since humans, whenever it happened, however we developed from animals, that we gained that free will, we actually know the difference between right and wrong. Like animals, they do evil things all the time, but since they don't know it's evil, they're just existing. Since they don't know
mhm.
the difference between like like good and bad, they don't think in the same way we do. They don't reflect, they don't think about like the concept of evil and how their actions may be evil and how they can go about and eating a vegan diet rather than than cannibalizing their fellow animal.
Yeah.
Um,
As
and,
the story,
and yeah,
just to bring back, yeah, we're different than animals because we know good and evil. And as the story goes, The folly of Adam and Eve is because they ate from the tree of knowledge, the tree of good and evil. And so because humanity participated in knowing something that the animals, the other beings on the planet, shouldn't have known, we have that ability to do right and wrong and to know it. Like we said,
And
animals
God,
can do whatever they want. They just don't. They get to do every kind of bad thing. They go eat a kid. It's fine for them because, to them, they got to eat. It's survival, it's nature. For us, we have the ability to move on that or just stay within it, but we know it. That's the difference.
and God, as the story goes, warned, Adam, as well as Eve, like, do not eat this apple. You can live and you can enjoy everything here, but do not eat from this tree. Do not eat the fruit. You know, but once they did it, you get to see a little bit why that may have been a bad decision, of eating from the tree of knowledge, because now we have to deal with questions of good and evil. Now we actually have, well, now we have conflict, and now we can reflect upon that conflict, and the fact that we have a certain sense of knowledge that animals do not is that we have the capacity to expand upon our evil. We have to rein ourselves back, like because animals they don't think, they think instinctually. If they're hungry, they eat. You
Yep.
know,
They
humans, we can
act.
restrain ourselves. We can go on hunger strikes. We can restrain and hold back our instinctual urges. You know, but um, but it goes the same way in the sense of evil. Like let's say like of course like for good, let's say like as a protest you can hold yourself back um from eating, and to go on a hunger strike for 20 or maybe even close to 30 days and damn near kill yourself because you believe so much in what you want. But with a um and but then of course, we also have the equal ability for us to again expand upon our evil.
Yeah.
If we liked killing our neighbor, we could in fact torture them. We could purposefully think of ways in like making someone that we don't like have go through as much pain as possible.
Look
So
at
we
the
hold
things,
back
look at the
our evil.
technology that we've made to perfected killing our other man. We have weapons, thousands of them, that can erase all life on Earth, should we want to, because we have the ability to. An animal can't do that. They might throw an acorn at each other, but that's really about it. We have the ability to think and to go beyond our instincts and to learn, which could be a very good thing if we put our minds to it, or a very bad thing. And so, with that quote going back to it, it is the job of governments, of civilizations, to rein that bad stuff in and to help promote the good, people loving, and society advancing tendencies that we have. And as we,
Peace-loving tendencies as well.
yeah, and as we come about our time, these are the kind of the questions and the ideas that we're going to be expanding upon with this series. Starting out will be more of explaining our attempts to kind of balance the ideas of peace and freedom, because it seems easy to just have them 50-50, but it's never that simple. And different people see one or the other as more important, and we could see how they do that through their philosophies or through the states that they created, and we could see, of course, what's worked and what's not. But that's kind of what we're going to be going with this series, in general. Did you have anything else you'd like to add? Otherwise,
No, not really. The power of a state, is and the responsibility of a state is to rein back the bad tendencies and exploit the good stuff. And that really is at the heart of peace v freedom. Maintain the peace-loving tendencies while also maintaining the freedom.
exactly. And with that, we'll see you in the next episode. We are the Marshals of Truth.